Hi, I'm Haley, and today I'm going to help you learn how to start training your dog from home. I get a lot of questions about how do you start and where do you start training your dog, and I just wanted to make this kind of just basic beginner guide so that I could hopefully help some people out. I know it seems like a daunting process to get into, and especially with a dog that couldn't care less about being around you or engaging with you whatsoever, this could be very helpful for you in those situations, because I know it's very frustrating having a dog that just doesn't seem like it wants to listen or doesn't seem like it wants anything to do with you. So I want to make this video to kind of help people find a starting point to start working with their dog. Now, I do want to add that it's going to be a bit different if you have some dog training knowledge, or maybe you're a trainer or you have a lot of dog training knowledge. This is going to be more geared toward people that maybe don't have as much dog training knowledge, or they're just starting out, they're not really sure where to start. This is really geared more toward people that are just kind of casually trying to train their dogs so that they can live with them better, as opposed to training some crazy obedient dog. Of course, you can work into that kind of stuff, but this is going to be just very basic and very simple, nothing flashy about it, but I hope it is helpful in getting a good foundation started. For the purposes of this video, I have Mika here. Obviously, this is not one of our dogs. This is not Gunner or Shelby. She is pretty novice with her training. She's not done a whole lot of training other than just some basic engagement stuff, so I figured she would be a better example of what to show as far as completing these beginner steps before you get into basic obedience and other things. I also just want to add that, in my opinion, for somebody that's just casually trying to get into training their dog, I'm actually not going to start with things like basic obedience. So we're not going to start with things like sit and down and things like that. I have videos on that. I have videos on sit and down and loose leash walking and heel and crate training, I believe. So you can go and you can look at those videos. But this is where I would start before any of that. This is a good way to train the dog to engage with you, but it's also a really good way to train yourself to get better at timing of your rewards and at timing your markers. And it's a very good way to get into the routine of kind of maintaining consistency with your dog and working with them. Doing things this way, I think, is going to help your relationship with your dog, and therefore is going to make teaching things like basic obedience and other things much easier for you. So just to start here, I have my fanny pack, I have some treats. You can actually just use their kibble. I actually trained Gunner and Shelby most of their commands and tricks using just their kibble. That way I didn't have to keep packing on a ton of calories, because with all the things we've worked on with our dogs, we would have made them extremely obese. So you can use their daily meals to train with, or you can use just treats or whatever your dog prefers. But to start, I'm just going to teach Mika a marker word, and I've worked on this a little bit with her before, so she's probably going to do pretty good with it. But the marker word I'm going to use is yes, and the word yes is going to mean food to her. All this is a way for us to instantly mark a behavior the moment it happens. Getting a treat out of your bag is not fast enough to mark a behavior in the moment it happens. You really need to catch a behavior that same moment, and the same thing applies whether you're using positive markers like yes, or whether you're trying to correct a dog using a marker like no. You really need to have it within the same moment it happens. Otherwise, the dog's not going to understand which behavior they're getting rewarded for. You may see trainers use similar sounds or words, or they may even use a clicker. It's basically the same concept as using a clicker. I just like to not have my hands taken up by more things, since I'm usually handling a leash and treats and e-collar remotes, whatever. So I like to use the word yes, just because it's consistently the one that I've used with our dogs. I find it's easier for people to catch on to. So anytime she hears that word throughout her entire life, she should get a reward following the word. Yes. And actually, I found that the easiest way to teach this is just to say the word and then give them a treat, or say the word and then give them some food quickly after that. Yes. See how she kind of perks up whenever she hears the word? That's because we've worked on it a bit before. Yes. Now I'm going to just kind of throw a treat off to the side. I'm going to say her marker and kind of see what her reaction is to it. If her reaction to the marker looks positive, so if she kind of perks up and she realizes that the marker means food is coming, that means you've successfully taught the marker correctly. So I'm going to kind of toss this treat to the side. I'm going to let her get it, and while she's a little distracted, I'm going to say the marker and see what she does. Yes! And here you can see she's coming back and she is expecting a treat. Good girl. So that is my sign that she is catching on, that the marker means there's food coming. So she immediately comes back to me to receive her food, or she perks up. You can kind of see, let me see if I can get her in frame a little bit. You can kind of see her perk up a little bit. You can't see her tail, but it is wagging and she's very excited. Yes! And see her little hop there. She knows that food's coming, so she's excited about the word. That's what you want from a marker. You want it to be a very positive experience for the dog, and you want it to consistently mean that they're about to get a reward. This is going to be important when you go to teaching anything else, because when you go into teaching things like sit and down and tricks and all the things, you're definitely going to want that marker to symbolize that they've done the behavior correctly. Like I said, it's not very quick. Pulling a treat out of a pouch, there's no way you're going to catch a behavior in enough time if you're only using that and not using any sort of marker or clicker or whatever you prefer to use. So now that she is catching on to the marker, and like I said, she has had a little bit of work with it before, so if your dog is not catching on as quickly, don't feel bad. She's had one other session of this, so yes! Now that she is doing good with this, what I'm going to try to branch off into is working with her on engagement. So it's similar in a lot of ways to teaching the marker, because I'm still just rewarding her for kind of hanging out here. All I'm going to do is every time she looks at me or makes any attempt to come back into my bubble or stay in my bubble, I'm going to mark it with yes and give her a reward. And she's also had just one other session in engagement, so if your dog does not pick up this quickly, don't worry. Sometimes it can take dogs a couple days to pick up on things. And engagement, much like anything else you teach your dog, you don't need to teach it once and then just never work on it again. You need to keep working on engagement and keep working on their commands and anything you teach them for the rest of their life. You need to maintain that consistency, and you need to make sure that your dog stays consistent by holding them accountable. So with the engagement step, I'm going to do, like I said, much of the same process. I'm just going to reward her for staying within my bubble. And this is going to be very easy for her because we're inside. She's in an environment that she's very familiar with, and she's on a leash. She's on a short leash. She doesn't have much room to get distracted. That's what you want to do when you're starting teaching anything. You want to decrease the distraction level by starting indoors in familiar environments. You want to start on a leash, so that way there is a very low chance that the dog's going to fail when they're learning something new. Once they master it with the leash in a indoor familiar environment, you can then remove the leash, see how they do then. Once they master it in that same environment without the leash, you can then move it outside, but putting the leash back on, because this is going to be a slow progression, especially if you're not very familiar with how dog training works. It can be very slow and boring in the beginning. So what you're going to do is just slowly progress up, and then eventually you should be able to do it in all sorts of environments. But you're not going to be able to teach it in this low distraction environment and then take her to a park that's got kids and dogs and people running around everywhere. That's not going to work. You're going to have to work it up slowly. So with her, I'm just going to do a few reps of just kind of rewarding her for being in my bubble, for making eye contact, for any attempt to engage with me. Yes! And I'm actually going to just kind of throw a treat out of frame here, and I'm going to reward her for coming back to engage with me on her own. I'm not telling her. Yes! Good. And I kind of just took a step back. That just kind of increased her momentum to come back into my bubble. And as you can see, yes! I am also varying how long I'm waiting in between treats. Sometimes I might give her a treat when she's looked at me for 2 seconds. Yes! And sometimes I might wait a little while and see how long she can make it. You don't want to push this too far too fast. You want to make sure that you're moving at a rate that the dog is doing well at. You don't want to overwhelm them all at once. Yes! But being she is doing really well with this, and she actually has had one other session of this, I don't feel like she's overwhelmed from waiting a few extra seconds. And as soon as she looks, yes! I'm just rewarding as soon as she looks at me or starts walking back towards me. All I'm doing really is just rewarding her for being around me. Yes! If you can teach your dog how to enjoy being around you, it's going to make teaching them things in the future a lot easier for you. Things like off-leash freedom, it's monumental that they want to stay around you instead of just going off all over the place. Yes! So teaching this as a first step is very important. It's also going to help when you go to teach things like basic obedience and trick training, all those fancier things. But really you want to move this and the marker word up the same way. So you want to start low distraction. And now that I've gotten a couple of reps with her, I feel like you probably get the idea. You're really just rewarding the dog for being in your bubble. I'm actually going to remove her leash now. She's still indoors in this low distraction environment. I'm expecting her to do pretty well with this, but she does have another layer of distraction now. She can go away from me. She can go and sniff things that are out of frame. She can go further than this was allowing her to. So there is a bigger chance that she may fail. And if you find that you move on to not using the leash and your dog, yes, your dog takes an obscenely long amount of time to come back and check in, you might want to just pop a longer leash on them or pop the same leash back on them and just kind of work a few more reps with the leash on, because like I said, you don't want to move up too quickly. You don't want to move the environment too quickly or the distractions too quickly. Yes! You want to make sure that you're taking the leash off and adding distractions. Yes! At the dog's pace. You want to make sure you're not moving up distractions or environments too quickly. You don't want to overwhelm them. You don't want them to have failure in their training journey. You want it to be as successful as it possibly can be. That way they enjoy training more and it's a easier time for you as well. Good girl. Yes. And she's doing pretty well. This is without the leash, but she's still in this distraction-free environment. And from here, what I would do is take her outside with the same leash, and I would do the same thing, just reward her for engaging with me, and I would work until she became really confident doing it outside without getting distracted too easily. I would then move on to longer leashes outside. You can get them anywhere from 10 to 100 feet long, so there's a lot of variety there. It gives her a lot of opportunity to, yes, to get distracted. So that could be a more difficult level for the dog to work up to. So what I would do after that is move it maybe to a different outdoor environment. So I would maybe move it to a less busy park. Yes, good girl. A less busy park, or maybe moving it to somewhere where you know there's not going to be a ton of people or dogs. And most dogs have less trouble with getting distracted by people and more distracted by animals. So yes, you may even want to work up to where they're doing really well around people, and then you move on to distractions like animals and toys and other things that they might find exciting. Different dogs get distracted by different things, so it's really hard to say without knowing the individual dog. But now that she is doing fantastic with this, I'm going to go ahead, yes, and show you what the next step I would take is. And this is keeping in mind that with every step you want to go through the same proofing process: leash indoors, leash outdoors, slowly moving up the leash length. And when they're doing really good with all that, you can move on to other things. You can teach other things when they're still not pros at doing things outside. You just want to be sure you're moving up things as slowly as the dog needs it. Yes. So the next thing I would do after getting really good at engaging with your dog, and by now you're probably a pro at timing your marker words and timing your treats, and by now you're probably ready to move on to an actual verbal command. And the first one I would work on is the dog's name. For me, I don't expect a dog to come all the way back to me with saying their name. I really just say their name to get their attention. So in Gunner and Shelby's case, which is our dogs, yes, I say their name just to get their attention on me so that I can give them a command. I don't use their name as a recall or anything like that. I really just want them to look at me or start coming back in my direction or engage with me, basically. Usually if I say their name, I am going to say a command after it. So Gunner, come, Shelby, down. So I think teaching their names really important, because sometimes words can kind of blend together, but I feel like teaching a dog their name is a good way to get their attention before you give them commands. So with Mika here, I'm going to follow the same process. I'm going to put the leash back on her because she has a higher rate of failure. We're working with something she's not as familiar with. So I'm going to grab the leash, put it back on her, and I'm going to show you exactly what I would do to teach her her name. So now I've got the leash back on her. So I'm going to kind of go through the steps that I would go through to teach her her name. Like I said, she does have at least one other session of this. She's not a pro at it yet, but she's probably going to do just a little bit better than your dogs at home might do. So don't get stressed out about it. This is not just a finish it all in one day type of process. This is a building a slow, steady relationship with your dog type of process. So don't get frustrated if your dog's not picking up on it fast enough for you. Mika, yes. So all I'm doing is I'm kind of letting her get a little away from me. I am putting a little bit of pressure on the leash. Now, of course, she's just on a harness, so it's not like the pressure's doing anything, but all it's doing is basically encouraging her to come back to my direction. I'm saying her name, and then as soon as she looks at me, I'm marking it with a yes, and I'm moving backwards to kind of increase her momentum to come back to me. Mika, yes. Mika, yes. Really, all I'm trying to do is teach that her name means to look at me. Mika, yes. She is doing fantastic, so I'm going to up the antes a little bit. I'm going to distract her with the treat over here beside the camera. I'm going to wait for her to get the treat. I'm not going to try to call her off of a treat. It's way too early for that. But I am going to throw the treat, let her go get it. And when she looks like she's about to turn back to come to me anyways, I'm going to say her name, mark it with the yes when she looks at me, and then give her the treat. And right, Mika, yes. She was a little slow. She was kind of looking down that time. We'll try it again just so I have a better example to show you. Okay, she's getting it. She's going to turn around any second. Mika, yes. There she did. So all I'm doing is waiting on the point when she would naturally turn around and look at me anyways, and I'm just kind of capturing that and taking advantage of that. Waiting for her to get done chewing. Mika, yes. Mika, yes. And I'm going to try to throw one and keep it within the frame so you can kind of see, hopefully, the moment that I'm talking about. I'm just going to kind of throw it right here. Mika, yes. There, good girl. And she's doing fantastic with this. So of course, just like with the last step, I am going to take the leash off and we're going to see how she does. If she fails, I'll just put the leash back on, and you should do the same thing at home. Like I said, she has had one other session, just a quick session of this. So she is potentially going to do pretty good. I'm hoping. She acts like she is understanding this pretty well. So I'm going to take a chance, take off the leash, and if she does not do well, then I'll just put the leash back on because I don't want her to have any failed repetitions of this. So now that the leash is off, I'm going to just kind of toss a treat, and I'm going to do the same thing. She's chewing now. She's going to turn around and naturally look. Mika, yes! I'm almost catching it right before she turns to make eye contact with me, if that makes sense. Mika, yes. I'm going to send this one further away. Mika, yes. Good. Good girl. And just like with all the other steps, this one's the same. you work the distraction level up slowly. So from here, what I would do is put the leash back on, take her outside, try it again. If she did fantastic, I would maybe increase the length of the leash just to make sure she's really getting it. And then from there, I would move it on to different environments. From there, you can also add in heavier distractions. I know early on with Gunner and Shelby, we went out of our way to find distractions for them. I would go outside if I seen a squirrel out the window or a rabbit or a deer, just so I could really practice around distractions that they found distracting. And it was a great way for them to practice their commands and their engagement around all sorts of things. We took them all over the place, all sorts of different hikes and parks and trails. And it was really a good way to kind of drill into their minds that their obedience applies everywhere and their engagement applies everywhere. And the more that they're able to generalize that, the more freedom we allow them. That's a very good foundation to start on, is working their engagement and then teaching them their name and their marker words. And through this process, what's going to happen is you're also going to get really good with your timing. And the better you are with your timing, the more chance there is you're going to be able to capture behaviors as they happen, or the better chance that you're going to be more efficient at teaching them basic obedience or tricks. Some of the fanciest tricks are taught based on capturing something that the dog is already doing. If you want to get really good at teaching basic obedience and tricks and things like that, you have to really work on your timing, not just the dog. A lot of it is just training yourself to train a dog. This process can be long, especially if you don't have much dog training knowledge, but it is doable. And I hope that this has been very helpful to you. If you enjoyed, just like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any questions or suggestions of things you'd like to know how to do or you'd like to see, just let me know in the comments below, and I hope to see you next time.